The Daihatsu Charade is a supermini car produced by the Japanese manufacturer Daihatsu from 1977 to 2000. It is considered by Daihatsu as a large compact car, to differentiate it from the smaller compacts in its lineup, such as the Daihatsu Mira. It replaced the Daihatsu Consorte, although the Charmant took over from the bigger-engined Consortes. In China, the Daihatsu Charade is called Xiali and is produced by FAW Tianjin, under the registered mark of China FAW. From September 1986 to 2009, it sold over 1.5 million units in that country. First generation. The first generation appeared in October 1977. It was a front-engined front-wheel drive car, originally available only as a 5-door hatchback, powered by a 993cc 3-cylinder, all-aluminum engine with 50 picoseconds. Japanese market cars claimed 55 picoseconds JIS at 5,500 RPMs. The 3-door hatchback version, introduced in the fall of 1978, received 2 little round opera windows in the C-pillars. The Charade was a surprise bestseller in Japan, wherever tighter emissions standards had made many observers consider the 1-liter car dead in the marketplace. The Charade became an overnight success and also became the Japanese Car of the Year for 1979. The early G10 had round headlights and the later G10 had square headlights. The Series 2 was introduced for 1981. Between the introduction in 1977, and December 1982, Daihatsu built 89,792 G10 per gram 20 type Charades. The Daihatsu Charade was very popular in Chile and some other Latin American countries during the 1970s and 1980s. Originally the same as in the rest of the world, later Chilean Charades came equipped with the downsleeved 843cc version of Daihatsu's 3-cylinder engine. This engine produced 41 picoseconds at 5,500 RPMs and has also appeared in export versions of the Daihatsu Hijet. The G20 appeared in 1980 and was developed as a result of a Chilean decision to lower import tariffs on cars with engines of less than 850 cc's. The G20 was also able to run on low-octane fuel or even ethanol. The first G20 version had round headlights, while the second-generation G20 received the same facelift as did the G10, meaning square headlights and slightly different rear lights. The 3-door runabout retained the larger 1000cc CB20 engine, and also received a 5-speed manual transmission and a tachometer. Greece, the Greek Automechanica company, founded in 1979, developed an off-road-style torpedo design version of the Charade la the Citroën N copyright Hari. With a metal body, the Zebra used Daihatsu mechanicals, grille and headlights, and many other Daihatsu parts. Production began in 1981 and continued until 1985, by which point changing Greek tax laws meant that this fun car could no longer be registered as a commercial vehicle and the market evaporated. The very first cars used the Series 1 round headlights. These were changed to the square Series 2 units before the first year of production had ended. Automechanica also assembled regular Charades. Second generation. The second generation was released in March 1983, again as a 3 or a 5-door hatchback. It featured several variations of the 3-cylinder 1.0-liter engine, including a turbocharged version with 68 picoseconds JIS and diesel and turbo diesel versions. The turbo diesel first appeared in the fall of 1984. The base Charades received the naturally aspirated, 3-cylinder, 993cc CB23 engine with 50 Euro 55 picoseconds. 0 Euro 60 miles per hour takes around 12 Euro 13 seconds. Japanese market models had twin carburetors as standard, while most export versions received a single unit which made marginally less power. The Charade Turbo and Charade de Tommaso models had the upgraded CB23 engine, called the CB60. The CB60 was also a 993cc engine, but was fitted with a very small IHI turbocharger, which increased its power to 80 picoseconds in Japanese market cars, 68 picoseconds in export models. The tiny turbocharger meant that an intercooler was not necessary. The suspension was lightly upgraded, with thicker anti-roll bars and slightly stiffer suspension, and the car also received alloy wheels rather than the standard steel items. The turbo version was available in both body styles. There were also high-roofed versions available in some markets either with the 3- or 5-door bodywork. The Japanese market van version also received a higher roof. In Chile this generation was called the G21, and like the G20 before it, it was equipped with a smaller CD series 41 picoseconds 843 cc's 3-cylinder engine. The G21 was sold between 1985 and 1990 approximately. The G11 was produced with two front ends, with square headlights and rectangular cat's eye-shaped headlights. The facelift was first presented in the summer of 1985. In Europe, the G11 underbody and various engines and transmissions also formed the basis for the Innocenti Moneta after Innocenti's contract with British Leyland expired. The G11 underpinnings continued to be used by the Italian automaker until 1992. Aside from 4- and 5-speed manuals, a 2-speed automatic option called the Daihatsu was also available. In Australia the range began with the high-roof 2-seater, 3-door CC model, while the rest of the range had 5-door bodywork. In 1985, at the Tokyo show, Daihatsu introduced the 926R, a prototype of a mid-engine Charade, developed together with De Tomaso and designed to take part in the World Rally Championship for cars under 1,300 cc's. With a 1.4 equivalence factor for forced induction engines, this meant that the downsized engine was classified as being of 1,296.4 cc's. The 926R had a mid-mounted 926 cc's 12-valve, twin-cam, turbocharged 3-cylinder engine moving the rear wheels through a 5-speed manual transmission and delivering 120 picoseconds. The 926R weighed 800 kilograms and had wider fenders to cover the 205/225 15 inches wheels. However, following significant crashes in the 1985 championship, Group B was banned and the 926R project was called off. There was also a limited homologation series of 200 Charade 926 turbos built, with the same 926 cc's engine producing 73 picoseconds. Nonetheless, the second-generation Daihatsu Charade did see some rally usage. The Swiss Daihatsu importer campaigned a Charade turbo in their National Group A Rally Championship in 1985, with Florence Lilia as a driver. South Africa. In South Africa, Alfa Romeo's local subsidiary assembled Daihatsu Charades beginning in March 1983. The only model available was the naturally aspirated petrol 1.0, with 5 doors and the high roof. Power is 60 picoseconds, and either a 4- or 5-speed manual transmission was available. These Charades were also exported to Italy to circumvent Italian laws hindering the import of Japanese cars. South African assembly ended in 1985. Third generation. The third generation of the Daihatsu Charade debuted in 1987. With styling by Daihatsu chief stylist Hiroshi Aoki and colleague Hideyuki Ueda, it originally shipped with a carburetted 1.0-litre 3-cylinder engine, also available as a diesel and turbodiesel, or with a 1.3-litre 4-cylinder with single carburetor. Featuring fully independent suspension front and rear, either 3-door or 5-door hatchback body styles were originally offered. A 1.0-litre twin-cam fuel-injected intercooled turbo, named GTTI and delivering 105 picoseconds JIS was later added, only available as a 3-door hatch. Fuel-injected versions of the 1.3-litre 4-cylinder and 3-cylinder were later added. A 4-door sedan was released with the 1.3-litre EFI engine in 1988. There were two different sport models available, the GTTI and the GTXX. Both versions are mechanically identical, but the GTXX features many added luxury items. These include full body kit, lightweight 14-inch speedline alloys, air conditioning, power steering, one-touch electric window down, and electric sunroof. Some of these options were also available to buy as optional extras on the GTTI. Side skirts were also fitted to many GTTIs, but in some countries they were only sold as a dealer optional extra. The GTX-X is much rarer than the GTTI, mainly being sold in Japan, although some were exported and sold in other countries in small numbers. All GTX-XS have engine code CB70, whereas GTTIs can have CB70 or CB80, depending on the country and region sold. There are no known differences with the actual engine internals. All CB70s feature catalyst emissions control systems. Even some CB80s for Europe featured the catalyst, although UK cars did not. There are more than likely slight differences between the CB70 and CB80 ECU mapping, with CB70 cars quoted as producing 105 picoseconds compared to the CB80's 101 picoseconds. This is probably down to the CB70 having the ignition timing mapped more advanced to suit the higher octane fuel used in Japan. A slight facelift in 1991 gave the cars smoother style rear lights and reflector panel, a slightly longer tailgate top spoiler, and a revised interior trim with fabric also on the door trim panels. There was also a four-wheel drive version of the fuel-injected 1.3-litre sold at home and also exported to a few countries, for example in Scandinavia and Switzerland. The third-generation car was sold in the United States for just 5 years, from 1988 through 1992. The car sold poorly, despite construction as tight as a frozen head bolt, and attractive styling for the market segment, perhaps because of its high price. Few dealerships, rough-running three-cylinder, low-performance, Toyota, which had recently procured a controlling interest in Daihatsu, withdrew all Daihatsu-badged cars from the U.S. market. Sales for 1989 were 15,118. Only the three-door hatchbacks and four-door sedans were available. The North American Charade appeared in 3 different trim levels until 1989. The CES, CLS, and CLX. The CES came with a 53 bhp, 1.0-litre three-cylinder, fuel-injected engine called the CB90. The other 2 variants were available with the standard CB90 or the more powerful 1.3-litre four-cylinder SOHC 16-valve fuel-injected, all-aluminum HCE engine. In 1990, the trim levels were reduced to just 2, the SE and more luxurious SX. 4-cylinder models were available with a 5-speed manual gearbox or a 3-speed automatic transmission, while 3-cylinder models were offered with a manual transmission only. In the Australian market, the GTTI was unavailable and the turbocharged petrol Charade used the lower-powered carbureted engine from the previous generation. However, quite a few GTTIs and GTX-XS have been imported from Japan and so do have a good following. In Australia, the third generation was assessed in the used car safety ratings as providing worse than average protection for its occupants in the event of a crash, and the second generation was assessed as significantly worse than average. The G100 Charade has been built by FAW Tianjin as the Tianjin Xiali since 1988, replacing brief CKD production of the previous generation model there. Heavily facelifted versions with more modern Toyota engines are still available, as well as copied versions like the Xiali and various Geely products such as the Hawking and its derivatives. Competition. In the UK, the GTTI had a fairly successful rally career competing in the RAC Lombard Rally in 1989 and 1990 and was highly competitive in the Safari Rally. The GTTI won class honours many times and was able to mix it with some of the 2.0-litre cars and on occasion troubling some of the considerably more powerful 4WD cars. With the turbo factor increased to 1.7, the 1-litre Charade was forced in the same category as the 2.0-litre cars. The best result was in the 1993 Safari Rally, where Charade GTX-X models finished 5th, 6th, and 7th overall. Fourth generation. The fourth generation was introduced in January 1993, again with hatchback and sedan bodies. Being somewhat larger than the predecessor, the 1.0-litre engines were no longer offered in most markets, Although the 1.0 remained available in Australia in the G202 Charade and also in Brazil due to a lower tax incidence for vehicles equipped with engines displacing less than 1.0 litre. The SOHC 1.3 litre became the base motor instead for most markets. The sedan, introduced in 1994, featured a 1.5 litre engine with optional 4WD. The bigger engines were also available with hatchback bodywork. The diesel received the G213 chassis code, while all other models had codes in the G200 range. The diesel models were dropped in all markets where they had previously been available. An unusual version is the Australian market G202, which came equipped with a CB24 1.0 litre engine. The heads and emission hose layout are completely different from the earlier CB23. In Australia, the fourth generation was assessed in the used car safety ratings as providing worse than average protection for its occupants in the event of a crash, and the second generation was assessed as significantly worse than average. The turbocharged GTTI version was replaced by a more conventional GT with an SOHC 16-valve 1.6 litre engine. In the Japanese domestic market, this version was named in honor of Italian ex-racing driver Alessandro de Tommaso, including a racing-derived camshaft, and was capable of 124 picoseconds JIS in the Japanese market. The export version, simply called T, was detuned to 105 picoseconds DIN. De Tommaso also added their own bodykit, Recaro seats, an RD Torino steering wheel, and Pirelli sports tires. A total of 120,000 Charade GTs were produced following this joint effort. The Charade was restyled in 1996, only 2 years after release. It now had a smiley face grille and changed headlights, looking more like its Toyota sibling, the Starlet. It was produced until 2000, when it was replaced by the Sirion and Storia. Nameplate use with other vehicles. In Australia, the name had previously been used for the L500 series of the Daihatsu Mira, which was sold there as the Daihatsu Charade Centro between March 1995 and 1998. In 2003, the Charade name was resurrected in Europe, Australia, and South Africa, on a rebadged version of the Daihatsu Mira. It was positioned one market segment below its previous generations and was available as a 3- or 5-door hatchback with a 1.0-litre inline-4 engine. It has since been discontinued in Australia in 2006, due to Toyota retiring the Daihatsu nameplate there. The L250 series of the Daihatsu Mira was produced for other markets until 2007. From 2007, Daihatsu in South Africa offered the Daihatsu Mira as the Charade in that market. Production ended in c. 2011. Between 2011 and 2013, Daihatsu Europe brought the Thai-built Toyota Yaris on the market as the Daihatsu Charade. This was the last Charade model introduced under the Daihatsu nameplate in Europe. References. External links, media related to Daihatsu Charade at Wikimedia Commons.